Hi, Cynthia here with this month's newsletter. And this month I thought we would talk about habits, because I've been reflecting on my own habits, and I've been getting some phone calls from other people about their habits. And then I ran across an interview on a podcast that I thought was worthwhile, so I thought I would share that with you. I about my own habits. I had some good habits before the current pandemic situation caused us to change things slightly. I would walk them all every day, couple miles to stay healthy. I would try to eat a healthy meal, and I would do things like actually floss my teeth every night. Those were good habits, I thought. Since the pandemic, I have stopped walking 5 times a week. I walk 3 times a week outside, and that 3 times is sometimes. My food intake is not good. It's not necessarily healthy, and if it is, it's not healthy but maybe a third of the time, which means 1 meal a day. But the good news is I still floss my teeth. I started to think about all this, and I started to say, well, wait a minute, what is it that happened between then and now? I think what happened is I made a decision to procrastinate about doing things that were healthy for me because I had so many other things to think about. And I understand that, but I think what's happened over time now, it's been 4 months, and over time now I've developed some habits that aren't serving me. And I thought maybe there's other people out there that may have experienced something like this. So for those of you who have worked with me for a while, you know that I always say that procrastination is a time management deal breaker, because regardless of the information I share or the tips I give or the behaviors that I discuss, if you choose to not do anything, then nothing changes, right? So I was thinking about this and I thought, the bottom line to all of this procrastination type of stuff is that you don't feel good about yourself. It's not only you develop issues with others, it's that you really don't feel good about yourself. It plays on your self-esteem. Then I get a phone call from a friend of mine back east who said, hey, you know what? I was just wondering, what are you doing with your time? I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, those of us who are not time management people and those of us who are not organized want to know how you spend your time if you're already those two things. I said, look, folks like me that teach what I do, we're human beings too. So sure, there's things I've procrastinated on. They may or may not be important, but they've been occupying my mind. And now that I had some opportunity, I'm doing what everybody else does. I'm cleaning out the basement and cleaning out the garage. And I thought, yeah, we are human. So we need to lean into being human and accepting some of it. I'm not talking about the procrastination habit around long-term or large decisions. Decisions like whether or not you want to buy a house, where you want to retire, where you want to work with your child to find out maybe what school they'll go to next. I'm not talking about that. I'm really talking about day-to-day habits that turn into something like procrastination, which really doesn't serve you. So in the process of thinking about this, I ran across an interview, podcast interview, with somebody named B.J. Fogg, F-O-G-G. And the interview is only 5 minutes long. I have included it here in the newsletter. And I think it's worth 5 minutes because there have been several books in the last 2 or 3 years that speak to habits or have the word habits in the title. One that was popular was Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. And the other one was a wildly popular one by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And in both cases, they talked about research and they gave individual stories. The one thing that I learned is that B.J. Fogg wrote this book, Tiny Habits, and his approach is very similar to mine when it comes to teaching how to manage the various behaviors we need in the topics that revolve around time management. And that is that we need to take tiny steps to build to the big step. People want to declutter their office, and they have one day or their home, and they have one day where they just organize everything, and then it doesn't happen again for quite a while. If we had taken tiny steps to get there, we would have built a different neural pathway and incorporated it into our lives into the point where it could become a healthy habit. So the thing that B.J. Fogg talks about are these tiny steps. There's 3 tiny steps. I'll let you discover them when you listen to the podcast. But again, it kind of goes back to, if you don't want to conquer replacing a good habit, let's say, with a bad habit, or even thinking about what it takes to create a habit, and yes, these all little tiny steps that get to the end, then what you're dealing is, you're not only stealing time from yourself with others, you are stealing from yourself, because it so negatively, at least the procrastination habit, so negatively impacts how you feel about yourself. And there could be other habits in there that do not responding to them does the same thing. So I want to encourage you to reflect on your habits that exist today and that maybe are supporting you. That's great. That exist today and maybe are not supporting you. And then I would think it would be a really good idea to listen to that 5-minute interview. I've actually downloaded Tiny Habits. I'm in the process of reading it because, again, I really do believe it's little steps that get to the big one. So I will leave you with these reflections for this month. I will leave you with a link to Tiny Habits interview with the author of Tiny Habits. And I hope you might take a next step in reflection and maybe changing a habit that doesn't serve you, right? All right, I'll see you next month.